Okay, we got some very good things to talk about today in terms of tier sets and whatnot. Bit disappointing the level of changes that we saw from Mage in point two. I think we were in much more need of a rework than the DK specs, to be honest, just because of our lack of choice. But we are well played, so I can understand why Blizzard might not see that from like a play point in terms of popularity and whatnot. Frost Mage in general has been doing pretty well this expansion, but it's got some major glaring issues. Anyway, let's talk about the changes. So they removed Time Anomaly and they buffed Inspired Intellect. This is pretty solid. Time Anomaly is super RNG. It felt nice as Frost because unlike as the other specs, when you actually got a proc of your main cooldown before your cooldown, you were able to utilize it well as Frost because we could stack Death's Chill and then reactivate our Icy Veins during the Time Anomaly one and keep those stacks of Death's Chill going to Icy Veins. That was actually a pretty nice gain. But for Arcane and for Fire, it was annoying, and for Fire especially, it was incredibly RNG. So it's good that's been removed. It's just more consistency in your gameplay. Also, Inspired Intellect, us taking that just means that, hey, maybe your raid leader gives you a couple more pieces of gear because that's some nice increased intellect, right? Hero talents, they redesigned Spellfrost teachings to, instead of being a full reset and sending out Arcane Orb, or just full reset Orb, to just be direct damage from your splinters gives you 0.5% or 0.5 seconds off of the CD. Still not really a fan of this for Frost. I mean, we just have so much CDR all the time with two blizzards out and this happening off every single splinter. It's a lot to me, to be honest. And I especially don't like it when Frozen Orb is so finicky in the fact that it will careen into nowhere if your tank moves 2 feet, or even if he doesn't move at all, right? On small hitbox mobs. So I'm glad that they reduced it though. Now it's gonna be a lot less RNG. I'm pretty happy about that. It was major RNG for no reason. It was a little bit annoying as Arcane as well. So that's good. And they buff Splitting Orbs to compensate. Feels good. I like that. More damage on orbs, fun. They buff Arcane's Mastery, solid. Reworked Project Savant. This seems like it might be pretty strong because that would then stack, I would assume, per charge. I don't know, not an Arcane guy. We'll see what Porm says. I mean, I am an Arcane guy, I guess, but yeah, cool. 2-point node, kind of cringe, but it could unlock, if this is actually strong, it could actually unlock the talent nodes after it, which aren't exceptionally powerful except for the one after Project Savant, like increasing like Nether Precision and stuff, or Intuition's damage bonus is kind of good, but anyway. Yeah, Arcane Orb travel speed, sure, whatever. Intuition buff to duration, that was definitely needed. That's actually really surprising. They swapped Arcane Rebound and Stag Cloud. Stag Cloud is actually not very good, I don't believe. So it's a bit surprising that they would do that. Here, let's take a look if they did update this. Because yeah, here's Stag Cloud. That is not good. This is in the third gate. But they put it, where's it? Right here? I don't. Oh, they put Arcane Rebound here. Evidently, Arcane Rebound is a little bit weak, but it's a 1-point node that is uncapped AoE. So there's potential that you take this, and that could be nice to actually do some more damage scaling. But it has really low spell power coefficient, so I don't know. Might be a little bit bait. We'll see. But yeah. Fine. So for Fire, Meteor's been updated. The enemy closest to the center of Meteor impact now takes 40% increased damage. This does work with Frostfire. For Frost. So your Meteor will now do 40% more damage on a single target or just a primary target. So nice. They gave this buff to Hyperthermia, which is, I guess, useful. It's not going to solve the problem of it not really doing that much damage because it's not buffed by Unleash Inferno. So, and this was already a part of Arcane Soul. So this is them buffing the base Hyperthermia talent, which definitely needs buffs, and also buffing Fire Soul. So nice. And this previously wasn't capped for Arcane, but they did cap it for Arcane, like they capped it for Fire, which is fine. Reduces degeneracy a little bit. And then the only change for Frost, they buffed Icicles by 40%. It says Frost Mastery has been significantly behind other stats, so we're taking a big swing at improving it. We will continue to monitor these changes and update Mastery Icicles as necessary. So here's the funny thing. you know, solid for Spellslinger, but Spellslinger already used Mastery. Like, Jaster's is best for Spellslinger, for instance. Was it a little bit worse than Verse? Yes, which was primarily because Splinters scaled worse with Mastery than with Verse. I'm not entirely sure exactly how this, if they updated, okay, I believe they updated the scaling. Okay, and if they updated the scaling, they did make Splinters scale better with Mastery than Verse. And it does appear that that's kind of what they did based on my limited testing. So, yeah, that seems like W change for Mastery for Spellslinger. I mean, Mastery was already good for Spellslinger, or decent, but now it seems like pretty solid. However, there's a slight problem with what they did for Frostfire. So, Frostfire, they increased the damage Mastery did. That's totally fine. The issue is Mastery isn't good because it's scaled poorly for Frostfire. It's not good because half your spells aren't on the fucking effect, right? And they made it worse, okay? Because they buffed this, great, that's good. But the issue is that excess fire, Frostfire Burst isn't on there. The Frostfire Empowerment Explosion isn't on there. Like, excess, or Ice Nova isn't on there. Meteor isn't on there. You know, Frostbolt isn't on there, okay? And they made this worse because, one, they just buffed Meteor by 40% in single target at least, and that's not a spell that scales with Mastery. And the tier set is this, okay? Why don't you read these and see which of these scale with Mastery? Meteor doesn't scale with Mastery. It applies Ignite, meaning it does even more damage, which that Ignite does not scale with Mastery. Frostfire Burst doesn't scale with Mastery. Frostfire Bolt doesn't scale with Mastery. Glacial Spike casts Power Blast, which applies Ignite, and that also does not scale with Mastery. So, yeah, they compounded the problem with Mastery for Frostfire, which is a little funny in the tier set. In general, though, this tier set's also rather weak, right? The only AoE things it has is Meteor and Frostfire Burst, dealing 10% more damage. And, I mean, I guess effectively, like, however much you want, like 33% increased damage or whatever. Because of the dot, which I think it's a cool tier set. I like the Ignite effect in AoE from Meteor and stuff. I am not really a fan of this because it's going to make Frostfire Bolt dominant in single target. That's already been the case for a while, and technically it's like essentially neutral now, or almost better now. And making it apply Ignite on top of the fact that it already applied a dot, so now it's applying 2 dots and increased damage by 10% is just ridiculous for Frostfire Bolt's damage. So, yeah, not good, you know. I don't know what they could have put it on, but it also is very unfortunate that they didn't nerf excess fire. It needs to not give Brain Freeze, because it giving Brain Freeze is why we are just flurry, Ice Lance flurrying. You know, it's a ridiculous combo that makes no sense, teaches people the wrong fundamentals, and is just degenerate. It's also disappointing that this 4 set is purely single target. And I mean purely single target. Like, when you cast Glacial Spike, it doesn't do 2 target Power Blast, it does 1 target Power Blast. Okay, so I'm gonna Glacial Spike, and it's just gonna send the Power Blast at my main target. And it did like 200 damage, near 200k damage. That's no damage. It's really bad. So the 4 set is complete ass. And, you know, in general, having a 4 set that does nothing for your AoE is not good. So I'm not really a fan of that. So I think this whole tier set is degenerate, and it's going to be a major problem. It's going to exacerbate the issues with Mastery. It's going to not be great to play. However, let's swap to Spellslinger. Okay, I am major W Spellslinger. Okay, it's a little boring. Like, the hero talent's just a little boring now. It does nothing. It's like passive, you know, CDR on your frozen orbs, and just more frozen orb damage. This, however, is a good tier set. It interfaces with our talents that, you know, you spawning an orb from Cold Front increases your spell damage by 10%. Is it a little bit unfortunate that, you know, Cold Front is still tied to Frostbolt, and so now you're incentivized to potentially spam Frostbolt to try and upkeep this spell damage buff? Yes. But, you know, the fact that direct splitting damage gives you a chance to grant Cold Front is interesting. It could just do a few things in AoE. It's probably going to be degenerate again because one of the main things you could look at this is like, oh, what if we just didn't cast Blizzard and AoE and we just Frostbolted and like Flurried and Ice Lance and spammed a bunch of Frostbolts? That could be strong. But you do need to cast Blizzard in order to get the AoE Splinters, which is not great because Arcane Orb, for instance, applies this for Arcane. So if Frozen Orb applied this for Frost, that could be a valid playstyle where you don't actually have to cast Blizzard. And I would like that. That would be kind of cool. Probably wouldn't happen because Blizzard did too much damage. But yeah, this is interesting. It'll at least change up our talents probably a little bit. It has rather strong AoE effect, right? With the increased spell power. That's pretty solid. And the more Frozen Orbs you have out, the more Frozen Orbs you get out. Again, it's like compounding on that effect. And this is actually reminiscent of Spellslinger for Arcane, right? Because the more Frozen Orbs you have out, the more chance you have to get a Cold Front stack, and then that Cold Front will then give you an auto-sent Frozen Orb, which then stacks on itself. So it could be strong, which I like. It's interesting that it specifically mentions Ice Lance and Icicle damage. I mean, normally Icicle damage contributes to Glacial Spike. I have no idea how I test that in this case because it's part of the 2 set, and I'd have to like find some equivalent item level piece. So that was actually scaled to 730. Maybe I could do that. Anyway, but yeah, direct splinter damage having a chance to give Cold Front is interesting as well. So right now, like dropping signature spell for shifting shards is usually a gain in AoE. It's just a massive loss in single target, and that's probably going to continue to be the case. So it's relatively unlikely, I would say relatively unlikely, that we play a no Glacial Spike build in Mythic Plus, and I would say it's impossible in single target, but relatively unlikely in Mythic Plus. And this is one of the reasons why they should have expanded on our talent tree this tier, because if they had, there would have potentially been room to take something else aside from Glacial Spike. But yeah, they're leaning a bit into Frostbolt. I hope it doesn't come back to bite us in the ass, because generally people don't enjoy Frostbolt centric playstyles, and I think Frostfire is just thoroughly hammered into that, and Spellslinger might be go in that direction in AoE depending, or we could treat this completely passively, and maybe we probably wouldn't even take Cold Front in that case, because we get like no stacks of Cold Front. You literally have to force yourself to Frostbolt in order to get Cold Front to stack. So yeah. Anyway, I think they're marginally interesting tier sets, much better tier sets than we had last year. We can look at Fire and Arcanes because this isn't a Frost only thing, I guess. So for Fire, it's going to make Comet Storm, Ice Snow, and Frostfire Burst apply Ignite and deal increased damage. So this is ridiculous because it applying Ignite means it scales with their mastery. And you know what the problem with Frost was? It was that everything that's in Frostfire doesn't scale with their mastery. That's also Fire's problem with Frostfire, but they alleviated that with the tier set, because now the tier set makes it apply Ignite. So, I mean, it's insane. It's literally insane. To me, this is what happens, right? So, crazy. And then this is ridiculous, okay? I don't even know, what is Pyroblast, like the difference in damage between Pyroblast and Glacial Spike is probably quite a lot. So this is like 235. Yeah, Glacial Spike has like 3 times the spell power. Of course, this procs 5 times less technically, but you cast Glacial Spike far less often than you cast Pyroblast. So this making Glacial Spike cast 100% effectiveness and benefit from Ignite is going to be insane for Ignite Cleave. And they literally fixed all of Fire's issues with Mastery, which its issues with Mastery weren't as pronounced as Frost for Frostfire. But yeah, this literally they just essentially added Frostfire's spells to its Mastery. That's their tier set. And then this Glacial Spike thing. So it's funny that they called out Frost Mastery, but they just fixed Fire's Mastery in the way they should have fixed Frost with the tier set. But anyway. Yeah, this will not cleave, right? There's no benefit. It's also going to do less damage than it does for Frost, because Frost has Piercing Cold, where it increases the crit strike damage of Glacial Spike by 20%, and then Frost also increases its damage through Mastery, so it's not going to be quite as strong as it is for Frost, but Glacial Spike still is one of the highest spell power coefficients in the game. So Yeah. This is okay. You know, it just makes Arcane Blast do more damage, and you have a chance to get Arcane Harmony. Um, could potentially mean that you're able to drop Arcane Missiles in AoE. I doubt it, because Arcane Debilitation still exists, and Arcane Explosion doesn't do anything for that. And yeah, so, you know, this probably isn't going to change much. This is solid. You're going to get way more intuitions, which is, you know, consistent charge generation. They didn't add the tier set that we currently have to the talent tree, which people liked a lot. So this is another way of you not really needing to cast so many Arcane Blasts in AoE, because you're going to have so many Arcane Intuitions. So this is really nice. I'm a fan of that. It's also, you know, another reason why you will not be casting Arcane Explosion in AoE, because the more Harmony stacks you get, the more Intuitions you get. So yeah, that's solid. So for Sun Fury, they just have Spellfire, Sphere damage bonus is increased, and your Arcane Face has a chance to cast exceptional spell. Boring, doesn't really do anything. This is kind of cool. It gives you increased spell damage and lesser time warp, which is probably like 20% increased haste or something when your Phoenix expires. So that, I think Sun Fury is just going to feel like really good to play. I mean, it already feels really good to play. It is, I think, what base Arcane should be when when we're done with hero talents. Spellslinger is usually a bit degenerate, though now they're kind of fixing that. So Sun Fury just feels solid, you know, and Glorious Incandescence gives it a reason to actually consistently barrage that isn't dependent on some weird, you know, buff ticker of how much Harmony do I have, how do I have Nether Precision, you know, what's Arcane Debilitation stacks, are we gonna execute, right, when Arcane Tempo falling off. You don't have to care about that as Sun Fury at all. You're just like, oh, Monkey C, Glorious Incandescence, Monkey Press, Arcane Barrage feels good, and Arcane Soul feels good. So, yeah. Overall, W tier sets. Still massacring Frost Mage absolutely horrendously. But, you know, that's just the way it goes. It's just hilarious to me that the Frostfire tier set makes the mastery problem worse, potentially, for Frost, on top of giving us degenerate playstyle again. And they just seem to really want to force Frostbolt on us. And that Fire's tier set fixes their mastery problem that Blizzard apparently didn't know they had. So, crazy. Anyway, I hope this video was a bit informative. You know, if more stuff happens, I'll let you know if I do some more testing and figure out some more stuff, you know, like the Meteor thing and whatnot. Just let you know. But as of now, you know, I would say it's a little bit up in there is what we're doing, right? We really got to see how strong this is, how the mastery change is really going to affect things. I would say, you know, this is definitely seems a bit more AoE oriented. I think it's very, like, people underestimate Frostfire's damage a lot, and I think that it's going to be incredibly strong. Like, this ignite effect on Frostfire Bolt is insane. It's actually insane for your damage, because the current dot version is also insane, and it's not even an ignite effect. So this being an ignite effect where it deals percent damage over time that's not flat is ridiculous for like deep shatters like ice, you know. So we'll see. But I think spamming Frostfire Bolt could be the move. Could be the move. It's just the 4 sets ass. So yeah. Anyway, I would hope they change the 4 set a little bit here. I'm really not sure what they would do. You know, they have it tied to Glacial Spike and Power Blast for fire as well, so who knows? I mean, I thought at least the Power Blast would cleave. Like, if the Power Blast cleaved, this could be like a solid 2-target thing. But then again, you know, Spellslinger's tier set only gets better against more targets, because it's more targets that Frozen Orb's like doing damage to and everything. So, and also more times you can generate Cold Front. Yeah, very interested to hear your thoughts. Have a good rest of your day.